Yo, what's going on, Sens and fellow hockey fans? Today we're going to be getting into episode 2 of the Snipe and Sens weekly recap, which once again you can find here on video format on YouTube. And if for some reason you can't watch the video, you can always listen to it on audio format on Spotify. I am working on trying to get it onto other podcasting platforms, but I haven't done that just yet. So for the second week of the season, we're going to be going over the 3 home games that the Sens had this week, and it was an amazing week. I'll just tell you that right now. We had a game against Boston to open up our first homestand of the season, so that was a really great home opener. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. We're also going to be going over the second game of the season on home ice, which is against the Washington Capitals, and finally we're going to be going over yesterday's game against the Arizona Coyotes. Then we're going to get into an overall thoughts on the entire week as a whole, and I am going to take a look at the current prospects in the AHL as well as in junior and in Europe, and just take a look and see how they've been doing since last week. And finally, we're going to look ahead at next week and give some predictions. Okay, so let's get into the first home game of the season, or the third game of the full season, as we took on the Boston Bruins. I was actually at this home opener, and it was an electric night if you were there. If you weren't there, you probably heard it through the television. It was that loud. It was a sold-out game, like 104%, I believe, or something like that. I saw in terms of attendance. It was the most insane game I probably have ever been to. Now the Sens win this game 7-5. It was quite a game as well in terms of action, not just the amount of fans that were there and the amount of people I met that game. Literally after every single Sens goal, I was high-fiving random people in the first the row in front of me and in behind me. It was just one of those nights that everybody felt really connected as a fan base, and it was such a great night. Even with the amount of goals, the amount of goals that happened made it even better of a night. But even pre-game, when we went to this meetup, me and my friend, we went to this Locked On Sens meetup, and that was also a lot of fun, a lot of good vibes, a lot of new people I met. So shout out to those guys. And yeah, that was a really fun night. But let's get into the game itself. This 7-5 victory over the Bruins was a pretty interesting one. So we scored a bunch of early goals and had a 3-0 lead at one point. Obviously Claude Giroux opened the scoring in this game, and that was a great way to start off our first home game, because obviously Claude Giroux, being from Hearst and also from Ottawa in a sense, he lived in Ottawa for quite a bit. It was just an electric atmosphere when Giroux scored that early goal, just over a minute in. We scored a couple other goals, and we were up 3-0, I think, on the first 9 shots of the game. So Jeremy Swayman wasn't playing good, and obviously our fans got on him, I got on him a couple times too with the Swayman chants, and it was really amazing at that point. But then Boston rallied back with 3 unanswered goals, and I kind of got a little bit nervous, probably because of the fact that we're a team that's just kind of coming out of a rebuild in a sense. So I kind of felt a little bit iffy that we were going to just blow this game completely at that point. But then the Sens, showing a little bit of adversity, would go up by a score of 6-3. We'd score 3 more goals. A lot of missed calls also around this point by the referees, and yeah, obviously we let them know about that. The referees were terrible in this game, at least from my standpoint, being at the actual game itself. When Tim Stützle got knocked out before his goal, that should have been a penalty. There was a lot of other missed calls, and Boston seemed to be getting away with quite a bit at this point. But we still went up 6-3, and it was good to see the young guys kind of bouncing back from blowing their lead. Then we almost blow the lead again. It becomes 6-5, and I'm still a little bit worried because of this team being young and all that, and not necessarily inexperienced, but still kind of in the stage where we're just getting out of a rebuild and all that type of thing. But then late in the third period, Artem Zub becomes a hero and makes it a 7-5 game with one of the best goals I've seen live from a defenseman. The way he just took that puck and then had his own rebound and knocked it in, it was so amazing. And then obviously the Zub chance started, and it was really great to see that in person. I've seen, I think, a couple Artem Zub goals, maybe one other Artem Zub goal in real life. And yeah, it's just awesome when Zub scores, or even when he touches the puck or throws a big hit. It was just quite the game atmosphere in general. So there was even a goal that the Sens had called off that should have been technically a goal way back in the first period. We should have technically had a 4-0 lead at that point. So arguably we could have had 8 goals, but the referees called it off for goalie interference, which It was kind of dumb because I think it was Brady Tkachuk driving the net. I think he got kind of shoved in from behind, so there was nothing really he could do to get out of the way of the goaltender. So I don't know why that was called off, but nonetheless, the Sens win 7-5 in what was probably the best home opener in maybe even franchise history. I don't know what other home openers have been that good, but that was definitely one of the best for sure. So some positives I take away from game number 3 of the season is that even though we had lack of finishing in our first 2 games of the season against like Buffalo and Toronto, our offense showed up when it mattered most on home ice. And yeah, obviously our finishing was not a problem in this game as we scored a ton of goals, and we could have even had one more in this game. We scored like 7 goals on 31 shots, so we were scoring almost at like a goal every 4 shots rate, which is pretty amazing. Also, I like that we were doing really good on the face-off dot. That was key. We were 50-50 on the draw with the Boston Bruins, which obviously they have Patrice Bergeron, who's the best face-off man probably of this last like 20 years almost. And yeah, so I'd say definitely the face-offs are key in terms of this game and for the rest of the week ahead. Also, the goals coming from almost every single line on our team, I think they actually did come from every single line, just basically showed that our depth is actually not that bad and we are very solid offensively built, even without guys with like Alex Formenton, for example. Having Tyler Mott on that third line has just proved to be as good as having Formenton there, I'd say. Now, the negatives I would take away from this first home game of the season and third game of the season is we had a couple blown leads, but at least the guys showed the like resiliency to kind of bounce back from that. But still, we need to like obviously work on our way to like closing down those leads. So that was like one of the main problems I think I had with this game, even though there wasn't really a lot to draw from negatively. Also, I didn't really like how our power play performed. We were 0 for 2 in this game, and we had no shots on goal apparently. So our power play is still a little bit woozy to start off with, trying to like learn its chemistry a little bit. But all in all, it was a perfect night. Not great defensively, but obviously we scored a ton of goals. And yeah, Jeremy Swayman got yanked, and Ullmark wasn't really even that good in relief. Like, he allowed 1 goal on like 5 shots. Anton Forsberg wasn't really that great either in this game, but at least we got the victory. Okay, so let's get into our second home game of the week and our 4th game of the season. The Sens are going to be beating the Capitals by a score of 5-2. Now, what's interesting about this game and what gave us, I think, the upper hand is the Washington Capitals are pretty injury riddled. They were missing Nicholas Backstrom, obviously, because of his like hip and all that type of thing. Tom Wilson was out, Carl Hagelin was out, and unfortunately Connor Brown could not make the trip because of a lower body injury. So unfortunately Connor Brown didn't get his tribute that he deserved yet. So hopefully we see that in I think the Caps come back to Ottawa at one point this season. I could be wrong. If not, then we'll have to wait till next season. Yeah, it just really sucked that Connor Brown couldn't return, obviously, because we'd love to give him a tribute. So can't wait to see for that when that actually happens. Also, Evgeny Kuznetsov was out because of his suspension, so that also gave us a little bit of an offensive boost because Kuznetsov is a pretty dynamic top 6 forward. And the Sens would go with the exact same lineup as the Boston Bruins game in this, so that would be having no Nikita Zaitsev in the lineup and having Nick Coleman instead. And also, before the game, I'd like to give a shout out to this. We did honor the late Eugene Melnyk with a nice tribute, and also his daughter's dropping the puck. And also, we even put up a banner with his initials, which is pretty cool. So, shout out to Eugene. Rest in peace to that guy. Without him, obviously, our team could have been in a different city at this point. Okay, so now into the game itself. This game, we kind of started off not on the right foot. We end up giving the Capitals a 5-on-3 power play quite early into this game, and obviously that's going to cost us in a sense because you have guys like Alex Ovechkin, obviously, who have really great shots on the Caps, and they're a pretty deep team once they're actually fully healthy. So we end up giving them a 5-on-3 power play, and both of the guys that were in the box were Jake Sanderson and Travis Hamonic, who are usually, I'm pretty sure, mainstays on the penalty kill. So basically, we would have to run guys that aren't really used to being on the penalty kill on the blue line. And yeah, basically we're on a 5-on-3 for a full 1 minute and 12 seconds. There was some positives to take away from this penalty kill, as Tyler Mott did block Alex Ovechkin on a big 1T chance to keep it scoreless. But then TJ Oshie would break the deadlock and make it 1-0 Capitals with 9:59 left in the period. And then Anthony Mantha would score literally with 9:25 left. So 2 goals like 20-30 seconds apart, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, we'd be down 2-0 just like that. I think on why we struggled on that penalty kill though is because we kind of gave the Capitals a little bit too much space, and we weren't right on them when they had the puck, and that gave us a little bit of trouble. And obviously they got a lot of chances away, and that's why they went up 2-0 early on. Also, late in this first period, we had kind of a shift where we were kind of on our heels defensively. Like guys like Travis Hamonic, for example, were up over 2.5 minutes on ice time, which is not great, obviously, for a shift. So a lot of guys were getting caught out there, and it was just not a great first period in this game. Now, we got kind of lucky going into the second period. We got a couple good chances, and then Nick Dowd would high stick Jake Sanderson and make him have to leave the game because he would cut open his lip, and Jake Sanderson had to get like 15 stitches, I think I heard, something like that. But then luckily, we did get a power play out of a different opportunity, not from the Nick Dowd high sticking. Unfortunately, there should have been a penalty on that, but there wasn't. But Drake Batherson would score a power play goal and get our power play on the board, with TJ Oshie sitting in the box. And then a couple minutes later, TJ Oshie would take another penalty, and we would tie the game up on another Drake Batherson power play goal. So 2 big power play goals to get us back in the game, which is great to see the power play converting, and it would be a 2-2 game. We started gaining a lot of momentum off those 2 goals, obviously, and then Josh Norris technically scored a goal, but it was waved off, unfortunately, because of a high stick. So unfortunately, we did not jump out to that 3-2 lead that we thought we were going to. Around the halfway point or later in the period, we end up having a 4-on-4, and Artem Zub made some really good defensive plays, I thought, on the 4-on-4 to just keep us at that 2-2 tie, because obviously that's the most important thing, is at least getting out of the period with the tie. And then the fourth line would come out with some really good energy and throw a lot of big hits and start crashing around, and obviously it caused a lot of chaos. Then we'd have another big penalty kill and another big block shot from Tyler Mott on John Carlson this time around. So Mott coming out with some big penalty kill blocks to keep this game as close as possible. And then Zub also blocked an Ovechkin shot. So a lot of guys just containing those big stars of the Capitals that are still in the lineup, and that kept us at a deadlock. Then Connor McMichael would fight with Parker Kelly after Parker Kelly threw a hit on John Carlson and knocked him over. So it was a little bit of a scrum more than a fight, but they both got 5 minutes for fighting. Overall, it was a pretty physical period, I'd say, for the most part, especially in the last 5 minutes of the period. And we get a late power play off an Ovechkin high stick, which should give us some momentum going into the third at that stage. 6 minutes into the third period, Shane Pinto would score his second goal in back-to-back games, because he did also score against the Boston Bruins, so he's up to 3 goals in his last 3 games at this point. Tyler Mott and Matthew Joseph would get the assists on that goal, so good to see Mott and Joseph doing stuff as well. Mott's always been really good so far this season. And that third line was looking really dangerous and applying a lot of pressure on the Capitals and definitely wearing them down and holding on to our 3-2 lead we had. All 4 lines really started to gel at that point, I'd say, and we definitely just kept on our gas the entire third period. We destroyed them in shots. Basically, we outshot them 20-7 in the last 28 minutes, and then in the last 34-30, we outshot them 31-8. So basically, in the last half of the game or so, we outshot them 31-8, which is unreal. That's probably the most outstanding offense I've seen from the Sens in quite some time. We just completely dominated from the second period on almost. So Washington would obviously pull their goaltender to try and get this game tied up, but then Tyler Mott would take an empty net goal, and that would put us up by 4-2. And then Alex DeBrincat would also get an empty netter, which hopefully could give them a little bit of a spark going forward in terms of goal scoring, and we'd be up 5-2 and close out the game and win 5-2 over Washington. So a nice comeback win. We were down 2-0, but rallied back to go ahead, and then a couple empty netters helped seal the deal in this one. But we completely dominated most of this game, except for that first period, which that first period was really bad. So positives I would take away from this game, obviously our power play definitely helped out in this game. That would definitely be a positive, as we scored 2 power play goals to help spark that comeback. Also, another positive would be the complete dominance we had from the second period on in shots and chances. We just completely got a lot of chances, and it was good. We also limited their big guys to not a lot of shots, especially Ovechkin, who only had 2 shots on goal. And that was just really good defensive play. And Josh Norris made a great defensive play in that game as well, taking the puck away from Ovechkin. We just didn't give him enough space, which is good. You got to shut down those big stars of players on teams, right? Also, a lot of different players were on the score sheet in that game, and it was a much better defensive effort than it was against the Boston Bruins. Faceoffs also continued to be really strong from key players like Mark Kastelik, who's over 70% on the draw this year. So our faceoffs are definitely proving very important in these early games this season. So some negatives I would take away from this game for sure would be the fact that we took a little bit too much penalties, so we're very undisciplined at this point, and obviously they get 2 power play goals early in the game, and that kind of cost us a bit early on, but luckily the boys had enough in them to get back into the game and win it as well. So yeah, with those 2 goals in rapid succession, obviously we need to find a way to make sure we don't allow 2 quick goals a lot, because we did that I think also against Boston, if I remember correctly, with the second and third goal they scored, they were pretty close in time. So obviously the team needs to be a little bit better in terms of that, and also a little bit better in terms of discipline. Okay, so let's get into the third and final game of this week, which we took on the Arizona Coyotes, and we win this by a score of 6-2, and it was another great game from this team. Good defensive effort, just like the game against the Capitals, and obviously a great offensive effort as well, because we've been having some really good offensive efforts in these first 3 games on home ice, so hopefully that continues into next week. But anyways, early into this game, Artem Zub would make a great play and intercept a pass from Jack McBain on the Coyotes, and basically it somehow found a way to Shane Pinto, who would score his 4th goal in his last 4 games. He's only the 3rd player that the Sens have ever had that's 21 or younger to have a 4-game goal streak. The other 2 players being Alexei Yashin, who did that actually 2 times, which is pretty surprising. Well, not really, actually. He was really good early on. And then also Mike Fisher was also the other one, which is interesting. So maybe Pinto could turn out to be like our Mike Fisher of our Stanley Cup run we had back in 2007. Who knows? Samad and Zub would draw assists on that goal. And then a couple minutes later, we would get another goal off a shot from Sanderson as Jake Sanderson threw it to the net. And Josh Norris would tip in his 1st goal of the season, so good to see Norris getting on the board. And we had 2 goals on our first 4 shots of the game to go up 2-0. So Alex DeBrincat would also get an assist on that goal, so good to see Brinksy still picking up some points. He hasn't really scored a lot of goals, he's only got the 1 goal, but he has been picking up assists, so at least he is still producing pretty good this season so far. Now, what I found funny about this game is apparently Josh Brown actually got a video tribute, because Josh Brown's now with the Coyotes, but I don't know honestly why he got a video tribute, because he was pretty terrible when he was here for the most part. He was just more of a physical body, and there was a lot of defensive plays that I didn't really like from him last season, so it's kind of weird that he got a video tribute apparently, but it is what it is. So at least he got a video tribute. Hopefully next time we could get Connor Brown with Washington at least. Okay, so late in this period, I think it was, Brady took a offensive zone penalty, but obviously we would have a good penalty kill effort from the guys again, like Tyler Mott and the usual players. We would then get a 4-on-3 for a minute 10, which resulted in a little shooting and a lot of passing, so I didn't really like our effort on that 4-on-3 in that first period. It just did not look like a good power play. Even though we have a lot of good players, I feel like a lot of guys are just kind of overpassing or overthinking it a little bit. You just got to be simple and simplify the game a little bit, get some more shots to the net, and maybe you could score goals. But if you're just going to consistently pass it around, obviously you need to find a way to get that puck to the net first, and not just to your teammates and stuff like that. So they just got to stop acting and trying to be like the Harlem Globetrotters, just feather something to the net, and you never know what could happen. Then the Sens would go on to a 4-on-4 later on in the period, and they would start getting some more shots to the net, which is good. So we started to get a little bit more opportunities with not necessarily a man advantage, but at least it was on special teams. And then also late in the period, Timmy would take an offensive zone penalty with a high stick. I believe it was on Nick Bukestad. So 2 offensive zone penalties in the first period, not really that great. Obviously, you do not want to take penalties away from your net, for 200 feet down the ice. It's kind of a bad thing to take penalties in the offensive zone. You should be taking them in the defensive zone, obviously, if you're going to defend a bit. But to take them when you guys have possession of the puck, not really a great thing. So after the first period, the Sens would have a 2-0 lead, with the shots being 13-6. Then we would start the second period on the penalty kill, and there was a good shorthanded chance from Jake Sanderson. So Sanderson had showing some confidence on the man disadvantage, so at least we got a good shorthanded opportunity there. But then Dylan Genther would score his first NHL goal on the power play right near the end of it, I'm pretty sure as well, and make it a 2-1 game. So good for Dylan Genther. I don't mind him scoring, because I don't mind the Yotes, to be honest, but at least the Sens held on to their lead at that point. Shortly afterwards, Drake Batherson would draw a penalty on what was almost like a clear-cut breakaway, and we would get a power play goal from Brady to put us up 3-1 again, so we'd have that 2-goal advantage again, which is great to see our team respawn from at goal against. But once again, we would drop a goal against as a little bit of a weird goal. Clayton Keller would feather it towards the net. it would bounce off of Jake Sanderson's foot and then off Travis Hamonic and once again Arizona was down to only a 1-goal deficit, and yeah, it was a 3-2 game at that point. But the Sens didn't let that get away from them, as Brady and Batherson were getting some really good offensive chances and looking pretty dangerous. Thomas Chabot also had a couple good chances after that, so we were definitely still on our horse offensively, and we didn't let those 2 goals bother us, which is huge for a young team like this. Late in that period, Mark Kastelik would take down Liam O'Brien in a fight and give this team a little bit of momentum. That's already our 3rd fight this season, because Parker Kelly has already had 2 and now Kastelik has had 1. So almost the entire 4th line has a fight already in these first 5 games, which is pretty awesome. So who's next? Maybe Austin Watson. That would be pretty awesome if it was. The shots would be 23-14 after 2 periods, and we'd have a 3-2 lead going into the 3rd period. Okay, then on to the 3rd period, Mark Kastelik would score a kind of a weird goal, but it was off of a really good forecheck from that 4th line, so good to see the 4th line continuing that forecheck, what they always have been doing in these first 5 games. And yeah, Mark Kastelik would restore that 2-goal lead, which is pretty huge for a 3rd period. And shortly afterwards, a little bit of a blender from Karl Vejmelka, and the puck, he didn't really have it frozen, and Tyler Mott would score on it to make it a 5-2 game, and that kind of opened the game up completely, as we'd be having a 3-goal lead in the 3rd period, which is huge. Drake Batherson and Shane Pinto would draw the assists on that Mott goal, and those 2 goals were only 47 seconds apart, so just bang bang, and all of a sudden we're up by 3, which is great. A little bit afterwards, unfortunately, Josh Norris would fall awkwardly off of a face-off and injure his shoulder. As of this recording, I don't know how long his injury is for, but hopefully it's not too long term, because obviously if he does, if he's out for quite a while, that's a big blow to our top 6, but at least Pinto could take over that role in that top 6 spot. But yeah, it was a little bit of a weird looking injury, because it didn't look too hurt, it didn't look like it would hurt that much, but I don't really know how he fell on his shoulder. And obviously he didn't return that, and he kind of went off in a lot of disgust and agony. So I really hope it's not long term, and hopefully he can come back as soon as possible. Hopefully it's just an upper body injury, if it's anything. In this 3rd period, Timmy would take another offensive zone penalty, so that's 3 offensive zone penalties in the same game, which I didn't really like at all. We would then be on the penalty kill, and Anton Forsberg would bank another big save. He also made one against the Capitals, and yeah, that kept us up by multiple goals, 5-2 at that point. That was a nice save on Shane Gostisbehere. Then Jake Sanderson would make an amazing stretch pass, and that got Brady in alone for a breakaway goal to put us up 6-2. And Brady's had 3 straight games with multiple points, or 4 straight games. He has been on a roll to start the season. That goal would be Brady Tkachuk's 200th career point, so he already has 200 points in, I think, less than 300 games, maybe. I could be wrong with that. Also in this period, I thought Eric Brandstrom had a good period. He made a really good defensive play against Jack McBain to keep us up those 4 goals. Even late in games when you're up by that much, he's still making good defensive plays. So you know that Eric Brandstrom is on a different planet than he was last season. The Sens would get a late power play and basically just wind down the clock in this game, kind of like an NBA type of style thing where they just wind down the last few seconds. And the Sens would get their 3rd consecutive win and improve to 3-2-0, with the final shots in that game being 32-22. Tyler Mott got 3rd star in that game, Brady Tkachuk the 2nd star, and Shane Pinto the 1st. So it was a great game, and the Sens won 6-2. So in their first 3 home games, they're averaging 6 goals a game, so offense was on point in these 3 games this week. So positives I would take away from Game 5 of the season is our scoring, in terms of depth scoring, was off the charts in these last 3 games, and obviously our offense continued to get a lot better than it was in the first week of the season. Face-offs are also continuing to be really good. We're currently, I believe, 3rd best in the league in terms of face-off win percentage, behind only Pittsburgh and Boston. So right now, the face-offs are very good for this team. Also, I thought we did a good job at limiting shots on goal in this game and in this week in general. And it was a pretty textbook game like the Washington Capitals one, as I mentioned earlier. Now, negatives I would take away from this game, there's too many offensive zone penalties. We need to kind of be a little bit more disciplined still as a team, and we need to stop taking offensive zone penalties, because that's going to kill momentum if you're playing against a very good team that can actually capitalize on the power play, not like Arizona. And also another negative I took away from this game obviously was the Josh Norris injury, because that could hurt us definitely, but obviously Shane Pinto could always step up, and that could help us win games as well next season, or not next season, next week. So yeah, that's basically this week in Sens action. let's get into my overall thoughts on this entire week. So I gave our offense an A+ rating because our offense was really, really good. Like averaging 6 goals a game on home ice is really great. So I gave our offense an A+, so a lot better than last week, because I think last week I gave them like a D. Defensively, I gave us a B- because there was our worst game defensively against Boston to start the week, but there was a lot of great defensive plays in that game as well, and also in the second and third game this week against the Caps and also against the Coyotes. I thought we played a much better defensive system in those two games, so our defense improved throughout the week. If it was just that one game where we allowed 5 goals, I'd probably have it lower than that, but a B- I thought was a pretty respectable number. And I also gave our goaltending a B- because I thought Anton Forsberg wasn't great against Boston, but he got the win, and then he was much better against Washington, and he was also good against Arizona. So the goaltending and the defense, I thought similar ratings for them. Offense was elite, so I would definitely say our offense was the standout this week. Now, for top players of the week, I gave Shane Pinto one of them, obviously, because 3 games played. He has 3 goals and 1 assist over those last 3 games, so he's been really good. Alex DeBrincat as well. He had 1 goal and 3 assists for 4 points in those last 3 games. Brady Tkachuk, 3 games played. He's got 3 goals and 4 assists for 7 points, so Brady's breaking out this year. And yeah, hopefully he has a career season, because last year he had 30 goals, so if he could score 30+ goals again this year and have like maybe an 80-point season, that would be really awesome. Also, Drake Batherson, I gave top player to this week. 3 games played with 3 goals, 4 assists for 7 points as well. So him and Brady Tkachuk have been just really, really good this season so far, and hopefully that continues all season long. And then I also give one to Artem Zub, obviously, because of that first game, and also the fact, I think, yeah, it was the game against the Coyotes. He picked up an assist and made a great play. So 3 games played, he's got 1 goal, 2 assists for 3 points. He's made some really good defensive plays. He's like a +5, I think, in those 3 games as well. And he's made some really good physical efforts as well. So just in general, Artem Zub has been really good this week. Next, we're going to get into our prospect watch and take a look at players are up to down there in Belleville. So starting off with Ridley Greig, he's still only played 1 game this season. I added a games played thing so you guys could actually see how much games played the players have played. But yeah, Ridley Greig's only played the 1 game so far down there in Belleville, and has no points. Phil DeUse has played 3 games. I don't know if he got injured or whatnot, but he's still over point per game, 4 points in 3 games, which is really good. Then you have Robbie Urventi, who's got 3 points in 5 games. Lassie Thompson's got 2 goals in 5 games. Sokolov's got 3 assists in 5 games, still hasn't scored a goal, which is kind of surprising because he's more of a goal-scoring guy. Cole Reinhardt's point per game, 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points in 5 games, so he's been definitely one of the best players down there in Belleville. JBD's got 1 assist in 5 games, but mostly he's been a defensive defenseman, so good to see him playing good defensively down there, even though I believe Belleville is like 2-3 this season. I don't even know what the record is now at this point. I should have probably checked that before recording this video, but oh well. Angus Crookshank's got a goal and assist in 5 games. Lodine's got 2 goals, 1 assist for 3 points in 5 games. And Max Ganette's got the 1 assist through 5 games. Then we'll take a look here at our prospects overseas and in junior. Tyler Clevin has got no points still in 5 games, but he has thrown some big hits, so at least he's looking like something that we could actually use on our back defensive line at some point, I'd say. Because obviously we don't really have that super physical defenseman. Other than, I'd say, Zub's not super physical, but Clevin would be like kind of like a freight train, kind of almost like an Anton Volchenkov or something like that, you know, willing to block shots and all that type of thing. Then we have Philip Norberg, who's got still the 1 assist through 8 games this season with, what team was that again? Sodertai, maybe? I don't even remember what team that is. Should have probably looked at these logos ahead of time to remember what teams these players play for, but oh well. Then we have Oscar Pettersson, who's played 14 games with Rogel. He's got 10 goals, 8 assists for 18 points. He's been really good so far, and I believe he's tied for the team lead in points this season, which is awesome. Then we got Jorian Donovan, who's got a goal and 3 assists for 4 points through 6 games with Hamilton. Tyler Boucher has 5 goals and 2 assists for 7 points in 6 games with the 67s. He's been really good, scoring almost a goal in every single game this season, so hopefully Boucher continues to be like that. Also, I want to quickly mention I did get a question from my buddy on Twitter, AJ Duelist. He asked if I would move Tyler Boucher in a trade for Jacob Chicken, and at the moment, I'd say no. The reason being is because we do not need a Jacob Chicken right now, I don't think, because the way our defensive core has been playing offensively and all that, I don't feel like the need for Chikrin is there at the moment. But eventually down the road, if the team comes to a spot where they're not doing too well, maybe I would be willing to move Tyler Boucher, but I feel like right now I would definitely not do that. I don't know who I would give up in order to get somebody like Chikrin if we actually wanted Chikrin. Then Zach Ostapchuk's got 6 points in 4 games, 3 goals, 3 assists. I believe he had 3 points in his most recent outing, so good to see Ostapchuk doing pretty good with the Giants. Travis Samara's got 1 goal and 5 assists for 6 points through 8 games with the Kitchener Rangers, so he's been doing his part offensively, which is good. Chandler Romeo has an assist in 10 games with the Sting. Carson Latimer still got 5 points in 9 games with the Prince Albert Raiders, and Ben Rogers got the 1 assist in 4 games with the Frontenacs. Finally, we'll take a look at our goaltending prospects. Mads Søgaard still hasn't yet to play since that injury he sustained in the first game of the season, unfortunately, so hopefully he comes back pretty soon. So he's obviously still got the 14.06 goals against average and an 800 save percentage through 1 game. Kevin Mandolese has played 3 games. He's got 1 win with a 3.63 goals against average and an 863 save percentage, which isn't great, but at least it is improving from the last week, I'm pretty sure. Then we got Levi Merilainen, who is starting to be a really good factor over there for Karpat. He's got 5 wins in 10 games with a 2.05 goals against average and a 923 save percentage, and I believe he's already got 2 shutouts on the year, so hopefully Merilainen continues to play like that, because obviously I'd like to get him to Belleville as soon as he can, because I think this guy's going to be a really good goaltender to have as well with like Mads Søgaard down the road. And finally, Kevin Riedler, our other goalie prospect that we drafted recently. He's played 8 games with 1 win only, a 3.76 goals against average, and an 887 save percentage. So not off to the best of starts there with AIK, but then again, he is a young goaltender, and he will definitely learn a lot. Okay, so finally, let's take a look ahead at next week's matchup. So first, tomorrow, we are going to be taking on the Dallas Stars, who are off to a 4-0-1 start, and are one of the best defensive teams in the NHL at this point. So that's definitely going to be a very tough task for this young team, or up-and-coming team, I should say. Should be interesting to see if we could get a win here. Obviously, the teams we played in the past, Boston was a good task for this team, and then our last 2 games against the Caps and against Arizona were a little bit easier teams in a sense. So it should be a good matchup for us against Dallas, and see if we could go for a 4th straight win, and if Shane Pinto can continue that goal-scoring streak that he's on. Then we're going to be taking on Minnesota over on the 27th, so on Thursday. It should be an interesting one there. We should be able to win this game hypothetically. They are 1-3-1 on the season, but obviously they do have some good players like Kirill Kaprizov, who's been off to a good start, so we definitely need to find a way to contain their good players, and we should be able to win this game. But obviously it depends if we could shut down their big guys again, kind of like what we did against Washington and shutting down Ovechkin. Hopefully we could do that against Kaprizov and their other good players. In our final game of this upcoming week, we are going to be taking on the Florida Panthers on the 29th on the Saturday in Florida, so our homestand comes to an end. But Florida is 3-1-1 this season, so the battle of the Kachucks should be interesting, because both of them have been off to a good start this season, especially Brady, I'd say. Matthew has scored, I believe, 3 goals already this season, maybe more. So it should be an interesting matchup in that one, as well as we go on a road game and hopefully get our first road game win of the season as well, because we haven't won there yet, obviously. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this week's video. So hopefully you guys like this video again. And once again, I am going to be doing these every single week on Sundays, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of recap on the Sens season as it goes on. And yeah, hopefully we could have another good week ahead. And like I said, it's going to be a very tough task. Some of these games for this team, like Dallas and Florida, should be tough games. But hopefully we can find ways to win them, because we have been able to beat teams like Boston, which Boston's one of the best teams in the league right now. So it should be interesting to see what these games are like ahead. So let me know what you guys think down below, and we'll see you guys next week.